Let's talk about tool watches, which initially I thought was quite a pedestrian thing to talk about. I feel like it's quite obvious. However, I since feel like maybe there's a bit of discussion around what is a tool watch. Nico's recently just posted this.
How can you say that a Rolex Explorer is a tool watch?
Now, I'm not one for YouTube beef. He's a mate. But I do disagree with the idea that the Rolex Explorer isn't a tool watch. Now, the reason I think it's up for debate is because I do a podcast with Britt Pierce called The Movement Podcast, where I share Nico's thoughts on the Explorer not being a tool watch. And Britt actually agreed with Nico to start off with. But it got me thinking, do we all agree on what actually is a tool watch? I keep killing the plants in the studio, so I've gone out and bought myself a fake plant, which is weirdly heavy. Up close, it looks quite shit. So Nico's argument is that a tool watch is a watch that has an extra function beyond time that is for a purpose. That is a sound idea. However, I'd zoom out a bit more and say a tool watch is any watch that's been designed for a purpose. And to show an example of that, I kind of feel like you need to look at the opposite side of the watch world. Dress watches, because I feel like there's only really two camps of watches. You have a dress watch and you have a tool watch. Now, another topic that we've discussed on the Movement Podcast is this idea of what watch categories are there, because I feel like under tool watch you then have chronographs, you have diver watches and so on. Under dress watches you then have minute repeaters, you've got perpetual calendars and so on. But I feel like it always goes back to those two categories. Britt came up with the idea of there should be a third category that sits in between. For example, the date just. The date just from Rolex is neither a tool watch or a dress watch. It's too dressy to be a tool watch, but it's not quite dressy enough to be a dress watch. So there should be three categories: dress watch, casual watch, and then tool watch. So a dress watch, in my eyes, is a watch that's been solely designed based on looks. The functionality is secondary. The fact it tells a time is secondary. An example of that is my Omega DeVille. This is actually my grandfather's watch. The hands are absolutely tiny on this thing. You've also got a glossy dial and you've got glossy hands. None of this has been designed to actually tell the time. The time is obviously a function and it is a functioning watch and you can tell the time. But all the elements of it are based around design, not functionality. Another example would be my Date Just. Now, this kind of falls within the category of what Nico was talking about, tool watches having extra functions beyond time. This does, in fact, have a rotating dive bezel, but it's simply for style, not for functionality. So the argument is that a tool watch needs to have a functionality that is beyond just telling the time, that then gives it the tool-like aspect, be it a dive watch with a dive bezel, be it a GMT watch with a GMT function, a hand showing the GMT time or a secondary time zone, or perhaps a chronograph. Now, the Explorer fits within the field watch category. Field watch categories goes back to something like this. This is a CWC G10. This is what was issued to the British military for decades in various forms. This is a quartz form. This was actually issued. This was issued in 1999, I think it was. Yeah, so you can see the numbers on the back. I've done a full video on these watches. Really interesting little watches. The point is that this is, without a doubt, a tool watch, despite the fact it only tells the time. Now, you don't get more of a tooly watch than a watch that has been designed for the military, that was issued to military personnel and used within the military. This is the most genuine example of a tool watch. Now, you have modern day interpretations of that, like this IDBC Mark 20. This is a pilot's watch, which has very similar characteristics as that field watch. Now, all of these designs go back to the Dirty Dozen, which again, time only, and 100% tool watches. So what makes a tool watch? So something that isn't a tool watch is a watch that's been designed purely for the design, the aesthetics, to look good. The aspects of a tool watch would be features designed solely to make it a usable device. For example, this has all the numerals for you to read out. It's got a triangle at 12 o'clock that's loomed and shows you which way is up for the watch. It also has loomed hands and it has a high contrast dial, in contrast to this Date Just, which doesn't have a high contrast dial. You've got a gold dial and you have gold hands. That is the complete opposite of high contrast. The same thing with the IDBC Mark 20. Very high contrast dial, triangle at 12. And the idea around the triangle is that you know exactly which way the watch should be, the correct orientation for the watch, improving legibility, improving the confidence in you reading the time. You don't necessarily need to see which of the numbers the hands are pointing at because you know which orientation the watch should be in, and so you can glance and be able to tell the time. Also look at the amount of loom between the Omega DeVille. Tiny amounts of loom on the hands, about the width of a couple of pieces of hair, if not a piece of hair, and then the amount of loom on the CWC. The majority of the hand is illumined. Now, the reason I think this is up for debate is because it's Rolex. You could argue that there are no tool watches from Rolex, apart from perhaps the Explorer 2 and maybe the Sea Dweller. Everything else has been jazzed up to push it beyond the tool watch, or it's styled as a tool watch, and there's elements of the watch that have pushed it beyond the tool watch. Things like glossy dials, or the use of white gold for the loom surrounds, and then you have the ceramic bezel inserts. There's so many elements that have been improved for not necessarily the sake of the performance of the watch, but to make it feel a bit more fancy. I feel like that's an argument to say a Rolex isn't a tool watch. The Explorer, however, has so many elements that are true of the CWC G10. You have very clear, legible numerals. You have a high contrast dial. There's a high contrast between the dial and the hands and the numerals, so it's highly legible. Yes, it's a glossy dial, but that doesn't necessarily take it away from being a tool watch. It makes it less of a tool watch than a matte black dial, but it's still a tool watch. You still have the looms triangle at 12 o'clock, so it's very easy to see what the orientation is of the watch. Then you've got the water resistance. It's got 100 meters of water resistance. I'm not going to read instructions on how to make a sodding fake tree. I am actually going to read instructions. There's 2 steps. I shouldn't have done that. I feel like the basic idea behind a tool watch is simply a watch that's been designed for a purpose, and that purpose needs to be an obvious one. This is where I struggle with watches like the Yachtmaster. I know it sounds like I'm bashing Rolex. I bloody love the Yachtmaster, one of my favourite watches from Rolex. I feel that the Yachtmaster is a stylised tool watch. Is the Yachtmaster a tool watch? See, I feel like it is up for debate what a tool watch actually is. I certainly consider the Explorer a tool watch. The Explorer was designed or marketed as a watch for mountaineers. That the idea is that the movement can withstand the massive temperature changes that happen when climbing a mountain, and that it's a sturdy, robust watch. I do feel like, however, it's been debunked that the watch actually went up Everest, and it wasn't even Explorer that went up Everest, but it was movements and cases and all that, so how much of the watch world is actually true anyway? But that's kind of irrelevant. How many Speedmasters have Omega made, and they've stamped first Omega in space, or the Moon watch? Like there's very few of those watches have actually been to space, and there's been decades of models being made that weren't actually the model that went to space anyway. So essentially that's my argument, is a tool watch is any watch that's been designed for a purpose. And now you could argue that a dress watch has been designed for a sartorial purpose. Okay, a tool watch is a watch that's been designed for supporting an activity. And there can be, just like in the car world, when you have 4x4 styled cars that look like they're off-roaders, but actually their off-road ability is highly limited. You can absolutely see this in the watch world as well. The Yachtmaster could be seen as a jazzed up version of the Submariner. IWC have plenty of interpretations of pilot watches that are pilot watch inspired, but actually they've been jazzed up to be a bit more fancy, a bit more luxurious. You've then got chronographs, watches that actually perform well as a chronograph, and then you've got watches that have used the chronograph function as a bit of the styling. Complications are often used as part of the design, as opposed to it being that functionality. Maybe I'm just a bit triggered by Nico saying that the Explorer isn't a tool watch, because the Explorer is one of my favourite watches. But I want to know your thoughts. This is obviously a bit of a conversation to be had, because there's different ideas around what is a tool watch and what isn't a tool watch. Do you agree with the idea that a tool watch is simply a watch that's been designed for a purpose? Anyway, let me know your thoughts. If you like straps like this and other watch straps that you've seen, jump over to barkandjack.com, check out the straps we've got. We've got new colours. I probably should have organised this earlier. We've got a whole bunch of new colours over at barkandjack.com, and they're now available in both of our warehouses, in the UK, catering for Europe, and in Texas, in America, catering for the whole of America. Right, if you like this video, thumbs up. If you like the stylist video, then hit subscribe down there and that little bell icon to get notifications when I drop a new video. If on Instagram, give me a follow at barkandjack, and I'll see you very soon. Take care. Oh, if you want to check out the podcast as well, just on Substack and YouTube, the Moon Podcast. Right, need to figure out what to do with this fake plant.